Hey all, welcome back to the minimum maps challenge in Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. I'm Kadros, and this is the video going over the endgame of this challenge. So for the pre-map preparations of this map, we make sure to bribe the 2 generic Falcon Knights, and after that we make sure to sell everything. By everything I mean everything. Everything except the Brave Sword, the Rescue Staffs, and the Feeble and Entrap Staff. So we buy 3 Master Seals, we buy and use an Energy Drop for 10,000 gold, Strength Tonic, and Speed Tonic for Corrin. And after all of this is said and done, we're left in less than 150 gold. And so our resources to this challenge were tight, but we were left with not even enough to buy a Vulnerary at the end of this challenge. And so we make sure to promote Silas into Paladin, Effie into Grey Knight, and Odin to Dark Knight just for movement purposes. And for the map strategy part of this video, I'll be doing a live commentary, so be sure to tune in to that. So initially, we make sure to give Corrin the energy drop and some tonics so that he can hit a little bit harder. We give the Enfeeble Staff to Elise, and we make sure to promote Silas, Effie, as well as Odin. Also, we make sure 2 of our generic flyers have the rescue staves.
Albert!
Now, let's move on to the actual clear itself.
My apologies.
This clear will actually be a 2-turn clear. We use the first turn to try to position as closely as possible to Takumi, and on the second turn, we do the rescue chain.
I'm with you.
Check out my skills!
We use the rally here to deter the enemies from using Enfeeble or Freeze on Corrin. The extra resistance lowers the hit rate of those staves.
We have no choice. You're no match for us!
Arthur is put here for a similar reason as before. He has low resistance, therefore enemies will have a high staff hit rate against him, therefore they will likely want to target him. In this case, they choose to target Silas and Niles, which is completely fine. The 60% hit rate is not the best, however, it's consistent enough to where you can hit it most of the time. We use rescue here to bring Elise a little bit closer to the boss. This allows her to just get into range to use the enfeeble staff on Takumi. We go ahead and use some rallies here, just to buff Corrin up a bit. Niles' movement plus 1 skill is very useful here and allows us to get 1 tile closer to the boss with this rescue. Here, Yoichi serves his only purpose in this run, to use swap once.
Everything will be fine.
With maximum range, Azura can sing to the rescue Falcon Knight here. Part of the reason I really like this clear is because everything is used so perfectly. Every unit has a very specific purpose, and every unit that moves to a destination is exactly 1 tile within reach. Now for the boss kill, unfortunately I couldn't hit the perfect 25 times 4 for the consistent kill, so a Dragon Fang proc will be needed.
Kill. Takumi.
Pain in the butt.
This ends now.
Made it.
And that's it. Fire Emblem Fates Conquest done on Lunatic Classic difficulty in just 7 maps.
Thank you.
And here are the results. Something funny to note is that actually this screen, the scrolling speed, is based on how many maps you cleared. So this footage is at 250% speed. Something that I should note is that it shows I cleared chapter 6, and this was something that I had to do just to make sure that I could choose the correct route within the game. However, none of the elements of chapter 6 were actually saved, so that includes Corrin's initial XP, weapon XP, Felicia. Also, I should note that after this segment, I will be going into a short tier list and some of my final thoughts. So if you don't feel like watching the rest of this, just feel free to skip to that.
destined to seek life beyond the shore, just out of reach. Yet the waters ever change, flowing like time. The path is yours to climb. In the white light, a hand reaches through. A double-edged blade cuts your heart in two. Waking dreams fade away, embrace the brand today. Sing with me a song of birthrights and love. The light scatters to the sky above. Dawn breaks through the gloom, white as a bone, lost in thoughts all alone. Destined to seek light beyond the shore, just out of reach. Yet the waters ever change, flowing like time. The path is yours to climb. Embrace the dark, you follow home. Gaze upon an empty white throne, a legacy of lies, a familiar disguise. Sing with me a song of conquest and fate. The black dither cracks beneath its weight. Night breaks through the day, hard as a stone, lost in thoughts all alone. The path you walk on belongs to destiny. Just let it flow. All of your joy and your pain will fall like the tide. Let it flow. Life is not just filled with happiness or sorrow. Even a thorn in your heart, in time it may become a rose. A burdened heart sinks into the ground. A bell falls away without a sound. Not day or night, wrong or right, for truth and peace you find. Sing with me a song of silence and blood. The rain falls but can't wash away the mud. Within my ancient white wells, madness and pride, can no one hear my cry? You are the ocean's red waves, destined to see like beyond the shore, just out of reach. Yet the waters ever change, flowing like time. The path is yours to climb. You are the ocean's red waves.
For this challenge specifically, I made a tier list, and I'll be going over that pretty quickly, but in the run-defining tier, we have Niles, Azura, and Corrin. Niles is probably the most important unit into this run, just because of his capabilities with capture. Being able to capture generic enemy units is incredibly useful, not just for getting more units, but also getting access to different skills that we wouldn't have otherwise, such as swap, rally speed. Also, very importantly, getting a unit with very high staff rank, which is normally takes a lot of time and money. So in order to use Entrap, you need a B rank in staves, which in terms of heal staffs needed to get there is a lot of uses. So now it allows us to cut back on a lot of money that might have been needed there. Moving on to Azura, she's just generally an amazing unit. She allows Corrin to move twice in a turn, which is our main damage dealer. I mean, what else needs to be said about her? She also gives free healing to everyone, she gives a speed buff, she gives an accuracy buff. Just overall a very, very good unit. Corrin, of course, is in the run defining tier, just because he's the one who's the Takumi killer. No one else here really could have done it. He's the only one that has access to life and death and sword fare here. Actually, that's not true. Odin does, but Odin's strength growth is so low that I'm not sure it would be possible with him. But regardless, he's the one that was our Takumi killer, and he was also our damage dealer, and that makes him important enough. Moving on to the necessary combatants tier, I have Elise and surprisingly Benny as well. Elise generally has been useful since the very first map. As a healer, she was our only healer for quite a bit of time before we got Azura, and as such she was very necessary on those parts of combat. But also her personal skills, or her personal skill being Lily's Poise, was also very useful in damage reduction as well as demo cell, giving a total of -5 damage taken to nearby melee units, which is quite powerful. This is not even to mention that her own magical combat is really good. Even at level 10 promoted, she's able to tussle with a lot of the endgame enemies and do quite a lot of damage to them. Also, rally skill is just a nice skill to have in the back. Moving on to Benny. Benny is another unit who is really good, but kind of in a surprising way. Normally Benny is a very underwhelming unit, and he's usually just a unit with high defense, and he's good on the Kitsune lair map usually, but here he serves a different purpose in just being able to tank enemy hits, which especially in chapter 20 no one else could really do that job, and he was very necessary for that. Even Effie with a rally defense wouldn't be able to take on these Falcon Knights that were incoming in chapter 20. Benny was the only one to do that, and for that reason, I think that makes him valuable enough as a necessary combatant. He also had notable use in chapter 13, where he was able to take on hits from Takumi, and also take on hits from Reina and that group of horses that comes with her. Moving on to the necessary utility and good combat tier, we have Silas as well as the generic 4 Falcon Knights. Silas, although he was kind of forgotten in the later stage of the game, in the early stages he had very, very important combat, especially in the starting chapter 7, where he pretty much carried the whole team to success. With Elbow Room, Elise's buffs, Vow of Friendship active, he was extremely powerful there, and it's kind of easy to forget that, but it's important to remember how essential he was to that early game. And even on chapters 8 and 9, he was incredibly useful. Also, being able to shelter with him is, of course, extremely helpful. He also just has great mobility as a Cavalier, and of course, when promoted, he gives that 1 extra mobility stat. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Silas. Shelter Singing is very powerful. And moving on to the 4 generic Falcon Knights. Not much needs to be said about them. I mean, they're generics after all, but their combat is serviceable enough. They can do quite good damage, and especially the ones with trample. But most importantly, they come with B rank staves, and B rank staves with high mobility is very essential to our endgame clear. Moving on to the good utility tier, I have Charlotte at the top of it. Main reason for that being is just she's a good parrot bot. Nothing really separates her from Arthur in particular, but she's just a good parrot bot. She gives good stats. Enough said. Hitaka is also in this tier, slightly above his Spear Fighter friend. Main reasoning being is that, of course, he's just stronger in combat, naturally. But also he has rally defense, which was very useful in some situations, especially in chapter 13 and 20. Yeah, he also has swap, which was very essential for endgame. Arthur is also in the good utility tier, and the only reasoning for this really is that he has the hand axe, which is nice for follow-ups, and he also gets rally strength, which is very important for Corrin. And in the last unit in the good utilities tier, we have Yoichi, which was our generic spear fighter, who had swap. His only real purpose was to use swap in endgame, but that purpose was really important, and we couldn't have done this clear without him, so for that reason alone, I have to put him in good utility. In the useful for 1 or 2 maps tier, I have Effie along with the 2 generic wyverns. Effie, although she didn't really have a super pivotal role in any of the clears, she was able to deal insane amount of damage at times that I didn't think she would be dealing that much damage at all. For example, in chapter 20, she's able to almost one round some of these Onmyojis, like from like level, I think it was like 13 Effie, which is honestly insane. So obviously she was very useful there. She was useful in her starting chapter as well, but she's kind of limited by her low movement, unfortunately. And I did have to spend extra money on a javelin to keep her relevant throughout the game, but I don't know, she's very good combat wise, but not anything really essential in terms of utility. Moving on to the 2 generic wyvern riders. The only reason they're really here is because they were useful in chapter 20, and that was pretty much their only purpose throughout the run, is just be useful in chapter 20 and making sure navigating the winds isn't too tough from Fuga's Wild Ride. I mean, this utility alone was actually extremely useful for the clear, but I can't really argue to put them any higher because they only served this one purpose, and they didn't really do anything that was necessary for the endgame clear. And moving on to the final tier, the Heartseeker tier, I have Nyx and Odin. In the context of this playthrough, they are kind of the same unit. They provide Heartseeker when they're next to someone, and they provide Malefic Aura for that +2 magic damage, which is pretty much only useful on Elise. Their utility is good, extra hit is good, but the run would have been possible without them, to be completely honest. The only reason I used them in endgame is because they were named characters, and not really a huge fan of using generics, but I used, I believe, Odin as a Dark Knight in endgame. That could have easily been replaced by one of the Wyvern Riders and just promoting them. Going into my final thoughts for this challenge was very fun, and I really hope that other people can try it out with different FE games. I think it's really cool for this challenge specifically that niche units like Benny were able to shine. Normally Benny is just a unit that, due to his extremely skewed stats and very low movement but very high defense, and he kind of has nothing going on anywhere else. Normally he's just kind of there, and he's useful on Kitsune Lair, but that's kind of about it. But in this challenge specifically, he was very pivotal for making progress on chapter 13 and chapter 20. And it's really cool to see some of these like niche strategies shine through in this challenge. You know, stuff that you wouldn't usually see in a normal playthrough. Also, I do believe that 7 maps is going to be the minimum amount of maps that this game can be cleared in without a change in rule set. So I really don't think you could beat Fire Emblem Fates Conquest in under 7 maps. But if you theoretically could, you would definitely need a better endgame rescue strategy than I did, and I'll admit that my endgame strategy was probably flawed. There's probably ways to easily optimize it. I didn't like look up a good endgame clear or anything. I was kind of just making up the strats in my head. But yeah. And if you were to do it under 7 maps, I think there would have to be some sort of sacrifices that you would have to make. One of them probably being is that you would probably have to find a way to do it without the Brave Sword. And I'm not really sure how you would. You could think about maybe doing it with the Grim Yato. However, that would require you to do, I believe, Chapter 5, which doesn't really get you much progress anywhere else. I'm not even sure if that would be possible because you wouldn't have access to Kaze from some of the previous maps. It would be very difficult to do that. And what else would you have to do? You'd have to do the Rainbow Sage chapter for the, I believe the Grim Yato. And then you'd have to do Endgame for the, I forgot what it's called, but the best Conquest Yato form. And that could theoretically work as an alternative to the Brave Sword, but thinking about it, you would pretty much just be switching 3 maps that you're doing to try and get a different weapon that is essentially going to be very similar to the Brave Sword. I have not actually tested trying to beat Endgame without rescue strats as well, so theoretically that's also a possibility, is that maybe you could beat Endgame with 6 maps totals without rescue strats. However, I doubt that's going to be really easily doable with 5 maps to prepare, and the 6 being Endgame itself. So if you think about it, you have 5 maps in total to try to get a whole team of units that have good weaponry, to have good enough stats to beat Endgame. Endgame itself is like an insanely hard map. Even doing all chapters, doing Endgame normally is really hard. I've only done it a few times myself normally. I usually just rescue skip it. So maybe if you had perfect Astra Crit and Dragonfang RG, you could find a way to do this in 6 maps, but that would probably require some pretty insane luck. And the main issue is that I need to do all these maps to get all necessary endgame units in order to do this rescue chain properly. Investing in the tier 2 prison to get more units earlier is an idea, but then again, you would need to sacrifice other really important maps later on, meaning that you probably wouldn't have access to the Brave Sword. And something that I should note is that actually to get the final version of the Yato, you actually do need the Yato in your inventory. So if you go through endgame without a Yato at all in your inventory, it'll say that it gave you the ultimate form of the Conquest Yato. Again, I forgot what it's called. But you won't actually see it in your inventory. So you do at least need the Yato in your inventory. I haven't actually tested it if it's just the regular Yato that you need, or if you do need the tier 1 Yato. But I guess that could be an idea. But again, I'm not sure that that would solve too much in terms of optimizing maps. But I'm very glad that I was able to do this endgame clear somehow, semi-reliably, with only 6 maps to prepare for endgame. I think that in itself is very impressive, because you have to think about it. In 6 maps, we got all of the necessary units, we got all the rescue staffs, we got Corrin powerful enough to 1-round Takumi. We accomplished an insane amount in just 6 maps. I think that itself is just amazing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching all the way through to the end. And yeah, have a good one.